Hi, I'm Mayor Liz Alpert for the city of Sarasota, and we just came back from a boat and a truck tour of St. Armand's Key and the Barrier Islands, and what a sight that was. It was much worse than I had even imagined it to be. There are boats twisted in the marinas. There are boats up against the seawalls, in people's backyards. There's debris everywhere, tree limbs, trees down, dirt, mud. It looks like a war zone, and our heart breaks for everybody who has to go through this, and for our entire community, that we have to have, on the heels of Helene, which was horrific enough, then this 1-2 punch with Milton, and now the wind damage. So it's like a 2-week-long hurricane that we've had to endure here. But we will recover, we will clean it up, and we will come back better and stronger. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to thank the Mayor, Senator Scott, and Congressman Steube for coming on that ride along with us. We were out on one of our boats and we got to take in a lot of the damage that was caused by this hurricane. For those out there watching, I just want everyone to know that your police department, your city government, we're doing everything we can to get things back to normal. We understand there's a lot of anxiety with respect to what's going on. We see it at the gas stations. We've got people lined up at a local Wawa here. We have cars backed up for about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And we're asking that everyone just shows grace through this. Work with your neighbors, work with each other. We're a strong community. The police are the community and the community are the police, and we really need to work together and show that grace. On another note, from the law enforcement side, I just want to let people know that you're not going to come here and you're not going to loot our city. I'm going to tell you that right now. So people will go to jail. We have extra patrol out there. We have our technology out there. There is a shelter that is open 24/7. It's called the Sarasota County Jail, and we will take you to that shelter. I promise you that. So thank you for coming, and again, thank you for your time. Senator Scott.
Thanks. First, I want to thank the mayor, and I want to thank the police chief for the tour. It's great to be here with the congressman. We're here to make sure your federal government does its part. The way recovery happens is locals do some of the work, you do some of the work, state does some of the work, and the federal government does some of the work. So Congressman Steube and I both have offices where offices are open to try to help anybody. I spoke with the president yesterday, and what we talked about is, number one, he thanked me for making sure we do everything we can to get the funds to make sure FEMA's fully funded, SBA's fully funded, HUD's fully funded, Department of Ag is fully funded, and we're going to do that. I think we ought to go back to DC to make sure that happens, to make sure that there's no chance we run out of money. I spoke with the administrator of FEMA yesterday and the Southeast director, talking to them almost every day to make sure they do their part. They're part of generally what FEMA is generally a funder of things. They're not the first responder. I want to thank the police chief, I want to thank the sheriff, I want to thank all the first responders for protecting the citizens here in Sarasota and Sarasota County and keeping people safe. I want to thank the people they evacuated this time. It looks like so far, knock on wood, along our barrier islands all on the west coast, we didn't lose anybody because they didn't evacuate, which is a real positive. Now what you have to do is worry about staying alive. Don't touch the down power line. Watch out for these down trees and trees that might come down. Our state's saturated with water. We've got a lot of flooding. I was just up in Hillsborough County. There's an area last night that had no water at 9 o'clock, a community with no water at 9 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, they had 6 feet of water in their houses. It came up that fast. There's going to continue to be flooding in our state. Unfortunately, we got a significant amount of rain in some places. So you got to be careful. Don't ever drive into standing water. Don't take a chance that it's deeper than you think. Don't take a chance it's going to pull you off the road into a river or something like that. You just got to be careful. So I want to thank Congressman Steube for his hard work, making sure this community is taken care of, making sure the federal government does their part, And again, I want to thank the mayor and the police chief for all they do. Also, it's important to get our schools back open. I know that your school superintendent is anxious to get these kids back into school. They got to do it in a safe manner. So it's great to be here. I want to thank the police chief and the mayor for the tour, and I'll do everything I can to make sure everybody does their part. So now let me turn it over to Congressman Steube.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Chief and Mayor, for the tour today. And it's heartbreaking to be back in my district that we just experienced catastrophic storm surge, and all these businesses and homes were flooded. And then 2 weeks later, the same businesses and homes were flooded. So it's heartbreaking to see people who started to recover. We just went through St. Armands, and we drove through after Hurricane Helene came through with a 5 to 7 foot storm surge, and you see people pulling products out and pulling things out and trying to clean up, and then 2 weeks later we get hit again. So like Senator Scott said, we're going to do whatever we can to ensure that FEMA and the federal government is playing their role in all of this. Senator Scott and I have a bill together. We've passed it in the House, and we call on Chuck Schumer to bring the disaster tax relief bill that I actually filed after Hurricane Ian. It's been over 2 years now, and it would allow any American that has suffered from a catastrophic natural disaster, a presidentially declared natural disaster, to deduct their expenses from their taxes. That bill has passed the House, and it sits in the Senate, and all that Chuck Schumer has to do is bring it up to the floor for a vote, and then send it to the president's desk. So we ask him to do that because that would take in Hurricane Helene victims, it would take in Hurricane Milton victims, and every natural disaster up to the time the president signs the bill. So we're asking that they do that, and I want to thank again all our local government officials, our law enforcement officials, for keeping us safe and doing the things that we need to do to bring our communities back. I'll turn it over to the superintendent at Sarasota Schools.
Thank you, Congressman. I just want to give you an update on our schools. Over the last 72 hours, we've had hundreds of our staff in collaboration with the county EOC staff working shelters. 14 of our shelters have been opened for the public. Over the Hurricane Milton, we've had over 10,000 guests stay with us in one of those shelters. We have now got to the point where we are down to one shelter opening. We are cleaning the rest of our schools and working diligently to make damage assessments to know when we can open and get back to normalcy. One of the things that brings a community back to normalcy is getting kids back into school. We want to do that quickly. So the anticipation is while we're looking at power outages and making sure that we have all those assessments and we're back up to speed, working with our county officials, working with emergency management, we do anticipate that hopefully by early next week we will be back in operations for our schools so that we can return to normalcy. Again, I want to thank the staff. We had staff working those shelters as other duties as assigned, right? Our core mission is education, but in times like this, in crisis, our community, our staff come together and they work around the clock as a service to our communities to make sure that our guests are comfortable during that time and that they are connected to the right resources. So hats off to them, and thank you for that. And please stay tuned to our websites and our channels on social media to learn more about our reopening efforts, and we thank you for that.
We can answer any questions. Anybody else?
Senator, so I know that you've been touring all over the state. You did this with Helene, and now you're doing it again for yet another storm so short and so soon after. Why is it important for you to visit each one of these communities individually?
So, well, one thing, and Congressman Steube and I both do the same thing. If you go firsthand and learn stuff, we both built relationships with state government, local government, businesses, federal government. So when you find somebody that needs something, we can get something accomplished. And so that's what we did. I've been traveling all around the state. Yesterday I was in Punta Gorda in Lee County. Tomorrow, my plan is to be in Manatee and in Volusia County and Orange County. So I'm going to continue to travel the state. Really, it's just to see the problems, find out what problems there are, and see what I can do to be helpful.
Congressman, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just encourage people, if they have FEMA cases, if they have things that they need to file, to reach out to our offices. We've rolled, because we still don't have power in one of our district, I think both of our district offices, but we've rolled all our calls to DC. I have my staff in DC that are actively fielding all of that and fielding all of those calls. So don't hesitate to reach out to our offices if we can be of assistance. Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent, question for you. I know there's a lot of pressure on the schools to get kids back. Maybe it's parents that have had their kids at home a little too long this hurricane season. What does it take logistically to transition from, an evacuation shelter back to an environment that's suitable for learning?
It definitely is a multifaceted approach. Obviously there's some preparation time to set up for our shelters, and so it typically takes a day before we open to do that. Then obviously operating the shelters, ensuring that we have food supply, so we do feed multiple times throughout the day. And then when you close down a shelter, there is a cleanup process that takes place, and that typically takes on a good day would be 24 hours to completely disinfect and get schools back in operational mode. So we're working diligently. We're ahead of schedule in terms of where we would be normally at this time. So really what we're dealing with is power outages, so ensuring that all of our schools' freezers are working. So we're dealing with some food loss at this time with the power outages. So we're working to make sure that we have food available for our students when they return. That's our biggest barrier, but fortunately there was no major structural damage to our schools. We had minor roof leaks and things that we're able to address pretty immediately, but we should, in terms of debris, be able to remove that and have accessibility to our schools. But food is what we're problem solving at this point, so that we can be back as soon as possible.
Okay. Mayor, we have a question for you that just came in. So this hurricane, we've had a lot hitting our community, and I know that the city government works closely with the county government as far as coordinating different evacuation levels that need to go. This storm was the largest call for evacuation so far. I know with Tropical Storm Debbie and Helene, we didn't see everybody heed those evacuation orders. What do you have to say to people that did choose to evacuate and we don't have any casualties so far for our community with this storm?
Well, I think because they heeded the evacuation orders, that we didn't have casualties. And in the city, and Chief Troche can correct me if I'm wrong, we really didn't get calls for emergency service because people had experienced Helene. They saw what storm surge could do and took this seriously, and they evacuated, and we're really grateful that they did.
I'm glad you brought the chief up because we have another question for him.
Thank you.
So we've seen rescue numbers dwindle this hurricane season. I know Tropical Storm Debbie we weren't expecting. We know that our barrier islands can deal with that storm surge, but it was rare to see inland communities like the Pinecraft neighborhood flood. I think your agency did about 500 rescues. I know of at least 2 during Hurricane Helene. Did you have any rescues during this hurricane? And if not, why do you think that is?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, in the initial hurricane that landed here, we had over 500 rescues, and I think part of that was because people just weren't prepared for what was to come. They learned from that, and then in the second one we had 3 rescues that we had to do, and in this one we had 0. And so, you always want to try to find the good and the bad, and if anything that came out of this was that people learned that you can't mess around with hurricanes, and you need to evacuate immediately. And fortunately, this time people did heed that warning, and we saw that in the barrier islands. A lot of people left the island, the A levels, the B levels, even to the C levels, and because of that, it really reduced the amount of calls for service for the police department. So in turn, we were able to handle other things. So when things popped up, we had the personnel to do that.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.